Good evening, guys. We hope you are well.
Hello.
Okay, two stories that we're talking about today, both very sad. I have to say I was really surprised this morning because I didn't really think we were going to hear anything from Caroline Flack's family. And underneath what we're being told, you can hear a family very much needing to feel that their daughters, sisters, whatever legacy is heard. And Caroline Flack's mum actually says in her own words. Now, she released today to their local paper, which she said is a paper we've always trusted, just a local paper in Norwich, interestingly.
The Eastern Daily Press.
Yeah, the Eastern Daily Press. And she gave them an unpublished Instagram post. Now, Caroline wanted this, apparently, again, just want to make clear I'm not a friend of Caroline's, didn't know Caroline. I think it's an awful lot of people saying that they're friends of Caroline's at the moment, aren't they? Jumping about on the telly.
Unfortunately, I do find that there tends to be a bit of a rush to have to almost over-amplify connections, whereas, the most genuine connections are the low-key ones, really.
Yeah. Anyway, so her mother
said,
says that this was an Instagram post that she wanted to post at the end of January, but she was very much advised by her advisors not to do it. And her mum has said, Carrie sent me this message the end of July, but was told not to post it by advisors. This is the bit that breaks my heart, but she so wanted to have her little voice heard. When I read that to you this morning, I actually cried, didn't I? Because I just heard that from a mother's point of view. It must be just so awful. She said so many untruths were out there, but this is how she felt, and my family and I would like people to read her own words. So this is very much the family wanting this to be shared. Carrie was surrounded by love and friends, but this was just too much for her.
Can I just say, incidentally, that it's telling that the family felt they could only be safe with a regional newspaper. And we'll talk a bit later, because I kind of asked a question on our community page on our YouTube channel about what generally, people feel where the responsibility kind of sits or lies. And we'll have a look at that afterwards, because I think it's interesting that they avoided the tabloids, and I think it's interesting that they wanted to sort of publicise a post that was effectively written, I presume, for social media prior to her death.
Well, I can imagine that there's been so many people wanting to apportion blame here or there or whatever, and that's, the thing is, that is understandable. People are going to comment on this. Because, she's very famous. She was a big star. And apart from it being a terribly tragic story, it is also news. So the problem is with that is that people then start gathering news that may not be news. So it's very clear, I think, from this, that what they want is to just put across exactly where Caroline's head was. So this was the Instagram post that she never posted. For a lot of people, being arrested for common assault is an extreme way to have some sort of spiritual awakening, but for me, it's become the normal. I've been pressing the snooze button on many stresses in my life for my whole life. I've accepted shame and toxic opinions on my life for over 10 years, and yet told myself it's all part of my job. No complaining. The problem with brushing things under the carpet is they are still there, and one day someone is going to lift that carpet up and all you are going to feel is shame and embarrassment. On December the 12th, 2019, I was arrested for common assault on my boyfriend. Within 24 hours, my whole world and future was swept from under my feet, and all the walls that I'd taken so long to build around me collapsed. I am suddenly on a different kind of stage and everyone is watching it happen. I've always taken responsibility for what happened that night, even on the night, but the truth is it was an accident. I've been having some sort of emotional breakdown for a very long time, but I am not a domestic abuser. We had an argument and an accident happened, an accident. The blood that someone sold to a newspaper was my blood, and that was something very sad and very personal. The reason I'm talking today is because my family can't take any more. I've lost my job, my home, my ability to speak, and the truth has been taken out of my hands and used as entertainment. I can't spend every day hidden away being told not to say or speak to anyone. I'm so sorry to my family for what I've brought upon them and for what my friends have had to go through. I'm not thinking about how I'm going to get my career back. I'm thinking about how I'm going to get mine and my family's life back.
I didn't realise someone had sold blood to a newspaper. I mean, I'm flabbergasted. And then today the story's breaking that her boyfriend has published a photograph. Published a photograph to demonstrate and show that the injury was so not as serious as the so-called evidence of blood and everything else was showing. And you look at and he actually posted a shot of the injury on his head. And you just, you're...
And was he saying again that he wasn't struck?
He was saying it clearly shows that there was no head injury, so there was no violent attack with a lamp as claimed by the CPS.
What is going
on? Something
CPS?
very strange is going on here. And I really genuinely feel blood being sold, that we've in our own way been on the receiving end. When I was done for drink driving, there was an absolute frenzy of excitement about the fact that someone from EastEnders' partner had fallen off the wagon or done something wrong. And, I'm sure that the tabloids have absolutely stayed on the right side of the law, but that's not what we're talking about here. You can stay on the right side of the law and you can still infer and agitate and aggravate and push out a narrative that skews the public opinion. We know that. That's the art of tabloid journalism. And I just find there's something at work in this that's deeply suspect.
The CPS put out a statement, didn't they, a few days ago, very clearly saying, listen, there is just a procedure that we follow.
Yeah.
And that is that. But I just think, obviously there was a mental health crisis going on for
she
Caroline.
says it herself, yeah.
She was in a deep, obviously, the insinuation is with the blood, we don't need to say, but obviously we all know what's being insinuated there. And the thing is, was there no, even on the day that she killed herself, paramedics had come out to her because apparently she had said she was suicidal. It just seems that the mental health issues that were going on with her weren't being taken into consideration.
It almost feels like mental health wasn't considered part of the equation. It was like her mental health wasn't considered part of the equation.
And the fact that she says, and the fact that her mum says she just wanted her little voice heard, to not be able to have any voice, to not be able to stand up for yourself, to not be able to see your boyfriend. It just does seem brutal. I think the very telling line, I'm not looking for a way to get my career back. I'm looking for a way to get my life back. Absolutely. And I think people are obsessing with this thing, Love Island, should she have had Love Island? What should Love Island do? I think that's kind of demeaning what was going on for her. This wasn't just about whether she was going to be presenting Love Island or not. Everything was taken away from her.
Well, her reputation
and a night that
and
she was obviously in a terrible state. He'd called the police because she was in a terrible state. And I feel sorry for the police as well. The police are absolutely at breaking point at dealing with mental health issues that they're simply not qualified to deal with.
Well, that's what I mean. I don't think there's culpability insofar as necessarily anyone's been vicious, but I just think that there's a lack of, and you could argue, how can we be sensitive to everything? But there just feels to be something about this where someone hasn't been attentive in the aftermath. Forget the night in question. We're talking 2 or 3 months ago, aren't we? So in the 2 or 3 months, it just feels like could there have been any endeavours to find out? She uses the phrase domestic abuser. She obviously felt she was going to be... Yeah, but she obviously felt she was being tagged with that term.
Well, of course she was.
And her boyfriend... It's not as if it's not as if it was a repeated offence. It's not like you'd have repeated occurrences of her being phoned, called, the police being called in.
But she's in this awful catch-22 where she did... I can't remember, one of her friends was saying that she was sort of, swinging between, shall I just say that I'm guilty so I'm not taken to court with the threat of going to prison? No, I don't want to because I'm not guilty. And that's an awful, awful predicament to be in, which many people have been in the past. Do I just say I'm guilty?
Just seems, and again, it comes back to that
God,
thing
but
of
a
being
poor
caught on one
family.
night. You know, it's like the actions of one night. That's not to say that, you know, was that the catalyst? Was there something else? Well, I don't know. On our community page, I kind of posed the question, you know, what do most people feel? Where does the burden of responsibility feel publicly? And the tabloid press comes out at 60%, higher than the Crown Prosecution Service or social media, interestingly.
But I do think, you know, it's like I've said it before, we've lost many people to suicide for way more than anybody should. It's so complex. It's so complex. It cannot be one thing.
No.
But what I would say is, if you are in a mental health crisis and then a castle comes tumbling down on top of you, then that is going to push you over the edge.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah, and I mean, and so
sad.
It's been a weird atmosphere. I've felt strange since hearing it. Obviously, I had no connection with her whatsoever. But when you hear of someone taking their own life in this manner, given the fact that we've been affected in the last year by 2 people, you're forced to face the complexities of human emotions and issues around addiction and mental health and emotional stability and all that kind of stuff. And another story that's kind of, you know, very much in the press today is Ben Affleck is talking about his alcoholism and how obviously it caused his split and was instrumental in his split with Jennifer Garner. You know, he's on a sort of press push for his new film called The Way Back, in which he plays an alcoholic or a coach of a basketball team who suffers from alcoholism. But he's come out as talking in great sort of candid detail. And this is where sometimes I was kind of, you know, I've had my opinions again on Ben Affleck, and I think we need to really pause and take stock. I've had very strong opinions on Ben Affleck. I've thought he's either not a particularly good Batman or he's not a particularly... And everything one feels, you sort of think, actually, hang on a minute, just because they're in the public realm, in the public eye. I mean, this man was Batman. He should be theoretically invincible. Do you know what I mean? But these are only humans playing parts. And I thought Ben Affleck to come out on his sort of press junket and push, yes, he's selling a film and all that kind of stuff, but he's obviously decided to use this press push as an opportunity to kind of enact some of the 12-step recovery program, which is come clean, talk about his vulnerabilities, accept the errors that he's made. You know, and he's talked about the shame and the guilt and the way in which he had to manage his own drinking habits in the light of being the son of an alcoholic father, how you know, he struggles with his daughters, with the fact that they've seen most of his behaviour on the internet. I mean, Maddie showed me footage of him last Halloween stumbling out of a party, and it broke my heart. Watching the footage actually broke my heart, because there's a man who didn't know where he was at, and then the next day the press were at his gate asking him, how is it? And he, you know, with great dignity was trying to reconstruct his sort of position of strength, because yes, he'd relapsed, and yes, he'd been into rehab and all these kind of things. And I don't know, it just, you know, I think there's an interesting contrast here in the 2 stories. You've got one which is sadly at the end, and you have another in which actually, you know, who's to say what the tipping point is for anyone? Who's to say what that breaking point is for anyone? And in watching that footage of Ben Affleck stumbling around Lost October, that could have been his final moment that pushed him over the edge. You know, I've often said I mean,
I was talking to Lisa about this today. I think, so we've just got to all really learn something from this, and not be so judgy.
Not so judgy.
I'm judgy.
Exactly.
You know, I want to be less judgy than I am. You know, I don't want to just see a film and go, well, that film was quite crap, actually. Actually think about what those... It's a big thing to just dismiss what somebody's work is.
Absolutely.
Or just dismiss what they are. I mean, we, you know, in a very small scale, we have it, don't we, with when we get trolled on here, or when we get something taken out of context and put in the newspaper. And in fact, when I went through, you know, the horrors of suicide with my ex-partner, the things that were said were just disgusting. And I think people do think, well, you've got this life because you're on the telly, so therefore anything else that happens to you it's not really as bad for you as it would be for anybody else. And so I think there's that, but I think that's also just in our day-to-day life. Even if you're not on the telly, let's all just try and just judge a little bit less. I want to be less judgy. I want to be less bitchy. I want to be less gossipy. I want to be less all those things.
And I think a lot of it comes from people who are... It comes from fear and jealousy, and a sense that people have got something that other people haven't got. You know, the fact of the matter is, for a vast amount of people in the public eye, they've worked incredibly hard to get where they've got to. So to decry them and somehow suggest that if they fall from grace, make a mistake, are vulnerable or whatever, they're somehow not as vulnerable as normal human beings, I think is just fatally flawed. It really is. And anyway, I just thought Ben Affleck, this is a man who has bounced around his alcoholism. And yet again,
really
he's now... Yeah, I really feel for him.
His biggest regret is his divorce, because he's a beautiful wife, and the fact that Jennifer Garner took him in to look after him again last time he came off the wagon, you know.
Absolutely.
And us having gone through this,
it's tragic. It's tragic. So I suppose, on the one hand, you've got one story that is
close
now...
to our hearts, actually.
Yeah, you've got one story that very much, unfortunately, feels like, well, it is in the past tense, Caroline Flack. And then you have another story like Ben Affleck, and pretty much Ben Affleck's is the story of anyone in a mental health crisis or suffering from addiction, in which tread carefully. I think the lessons of everything in the last week are tread carefully in your opinions and how you express them.
I even think, because I've seen a lot online, is people very nastily attacking the people that they think, whoever that might be, the people they think might have been responsible for Caroline taking her life. But I think even that we've got to stop. Even that. Even trolls. Let's just go poor trolls.
Well,
poor things that they have to be so nasty. How awful for them. Because otherwise it's just more hate, more rage, more hate, more rage.
Well, when I did a mental health chat about dealing with a troll the other week, and one comment really made me stop, actually, and it was someone saying, but spare a thought for the troll.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's interesting.
Imagine that you have to... We got one the other day on the bottom of the film, underneath the film that we were talking about, Karen Flack, and it was so horrible. It was so... And I thought evil, and I'm not going to say the word evil, broken, because I think that person is broken to do it. I mean, what kind of a person are you to write something so horrible to other people? So I think... let's have more sympathy and empathy, because otherwise we're just creating more and more anger actually online, and I think it all just feeds off each other, and it's just... But you know what, tonight, you know, Caroline Flack's family wanted this message to be heard. They asked everybody to share it, and I get that. If I was her mum or her dad and she'd left her last message, I want everyone to talk about it. So I think that's important. I think there's a lot of messages within that post, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Just be more careful with how we treat each other and how we judge each other.